YouTube comments from a video titled, Why Society Changed Forever After COVID. Part 6.
At LaraCroft_93 wrote,
I was on deployment most of 2020, so I was hella disconnected from what everyone went through. It felt like a dream. I was truly in my own world in the middle of the ocean, and we were doing COVID drills, not knowing WTF was actually going on in the rest of the world.
At Leah Schaefer X4F wrote,
The biggest change I've noticed is that fast food is terrible. The customer service is always bad and everywhere is understaffed. They will hand you the wrong order with an attitude, and all you can do is just accept it and walk away. This is why I rarely eat out anymore.
At VateFairFodder0 wrote,
I had quite a different experience during COVID. I'm an American from a small Michigan town and was teaching English in South Korea when COVID happened. I was never put under a lockdown over there. I don't really think they ever did that. There's no way you can social distance in an urban East Asian city too. Lol, so I never had to do that malarkey. There were never shortages. PPL didn't bitch about masks or vaccines, and it also wasn't obnoxiously political. The worst thing they did, I'd say, was trying to forcibly test foreign residents only at several points, but it would keep being shot down as soon as international media pressure was there. But for real, many WTF my age were still going to clubs over there during it, haha. PPL never did the pathetic afraid panic buying Americans love to do honestly. I've learned that Americans are the most unnecessarily afraid people in the world. Even Americans are 1,000,000 times more afraid of North Korea than South Koreans are. Haha, I also ended up having to travel to all the different schools, and actually was exposed even more and worked even more. Remote work was never a thing in South Korea, Japan, and it also never will be SRS. Their work culture is too based on power hierarchy, and being at the office to even think about implementing that, haha. I don't think I've ever heard those words, remote work, ever spoken the entire time I lived there, haha. I came back to the US and I could tell shit was changed. This country goddamn fell apart during this. I'm actually embarrassed how awful it seems the US handled the entire thing compared to other countries. Like really? Why is this country still reeling? Korea got over it so quick it seemed. I'm so thankful I ended up being stuck there during it all. It was such a weird difference being an American living abroad from 2017 to 2022, because really, WTF happened. And WTF happened with tipping and driving here too. How can so much change when I was gone for 5 years? Haha, the home I left is definitely no longer there. It's pretty sad, honestly.
At Radioactive Botanist wrote,
I don't notice anything. Then again, I was already doing stuff by myself long before 2020. The whole quarantine thing was just a weird, annoying thing. It did make a lot of leftists have very short fuses, though.
At Awake Never Woke wrote,
Thank goodness I live in NC. We weren't locked down as long as many states were. We have 3 adult children. Our son was a SR in college and graduated during COVID, and our girls were SRS in HS during COVID. Their prom was cancelled. I hated knowing that COVID was a farce during that time. BC, everyone was rioting, and they weren't talking about the rioters getting COVID. Then everyone being allowed into the country weren't being vaxxed, while everyone was losing their jobs for refusing the vax.
At mid_NYGHT wrote,
1640 high school senior through COVID here. It royally sucked. Easily the worst time of my life. I can't fathom wanting to go back. I didn't get a real graduation with friends. No end of high school trip. No hanging out with friends one last time as high schoolers. The last few months were taken and we were at home. At first it was all right, like a trip like early summer. But this summer never ended, and it wasn't a fun summer with things to do. This kept going for years. My first experiences in college were also online, which just felt like high school extensions or summer school. I'm finally going to a college in person this year. It ends this fall and thank God.
Regalia wrote,
The thing I noticed the most is all the businesses that went out of business, especially the small ones. And the food quality at most restaurants really suffered from COVID. I used to have a fat burger near my parents' home, and they had the best freaking onion rings I've ever tasted. Went after COVID and they were awful. Plus they doubled all the prices. Needless to say, it closed.
Daniel YL5JL 1/6Q wrote,
One silver lining to the pandemic was how it exposed so much of what is wrong with our government. Parents were able to witness the woke-washing via their kids' Zoom classes, the government overreach, the attempts to force vaccinate under threat of job loss, the horrible treatment of those who refused the vaccine, the inconsistencies of a dishonest media, CDC, etc.
Cassie Black 1776 wrote,
I became kind of bitter during lockdown. I was in healthcare. I didn't get a break. I didn't get hazard pay. And I felt like it destroyed people. It feels people are so rude and nasty, more entitled and anger.
Cebrian 333 wrote,
I worked throughout the whole pandemic at the hospital, so I don't understand this whole being stuck at home thing. That sounds way nicer than what we saw and experienced.
Just Simply Robert wrote,
Despite going through some stuff relationship-wise, COVID was probably the best period of my life in the grand scheme of things. I had an excuse to be left alone, as I don't like socializing or going to social settings really at all, so my life didn't really change at all XD. But in all serious, working in the service industry was a mess. I was one of the people standing at the door enforcing masks and occupancy limits. I would get verbally attacked at least twice an hour and got physically attacked several times. COVID really brought out the worst in people, and it never really got better since then.
Tango 8 Delta wrote,
My husband and I were on a 14,000 acre ranch for the first year of COVID, so we barely felt it beyond hearing from family and friends what they went through. Then when the ranch shut down end of 2020, start 2021, we were laid off and went to North Little Rock, AR. The difference was night and day, and we hated being trapped in our apartment the majority of the time and masking up and everything that went with it. The only good thing that came out of it is the friend group we established virtually at the time.
Katrina wrote,
I can't personally relate because people are always coming up and talking to me, but the younger generation doesn't seem to talk. The people under 30 are having serious problems.
Gabby wrote,
Tie for this Vitamir. I'm a white girl from ADX and TBA. It's not a race thing. It's literally everyone Lamau. Austin used to be so fun. Still fun, but the vibe has changed for sure. People are cold and not so warm to strangers. It sucks. Anyway, I loved this video.
Helena Grace 6478 wrote,
Okay, but your take on the male experience of locking down felt short-sighted. I don't think gender has anything to do with a person's ability to lock down and accomplish goals.
Katie Lee 7364 wrote,
Meanwhile, us introverts T8 arrived. I loved being able to stay in the house and not be obligated to do anything or talk to anyone. Best time of my life.
At the Magic Cuber wrote,
1547, I actually really disliked being a senior during COVID, and even more in hindsight. The extended spring break was seen as fun by most students, but for me, it postponed and later canceled future performances for my high school drumline and orchestra. It also ruined several promised/expected events. Many others have mentioned prom and graduation, but something specific for me was the last minute change to my physics class's Rube Goldberg project from a fun but competitive group project to a solo at home video project. Mine is on my channel. I'm actually quite happy with it. Later on, I watched my high school graduation ceremony on a YouTube live stream hundreds of miles away from my high school. I was in Wisconsin at the time. And weeks later, going to pick up my high school diploma in a literal DRIVETHRU line with no true feeling of closure from the 4 years of school I had finally finished. I had several friends and teachers that I never saw again after we left for spring break, though coincidentally, I ran into my physics teacher at Cedar Point years later. Now, don't get me wrong, I feel like college seniors had it way worse than high school seniors after all they had to just figure things out on their own in a new world after school. For me, though, having basically no feeling of transition into college alongside all of the thrown together changes and differences than what we were promised as a true college experience, it was a mess. All of this, combined with the political turmoil and being forced to be vaccinated or risk having my scholarships taken away, led to that time period being a really challenging time for my mental health. Eventually, I was able to find my way through things and certainly enjoyed the many positives that came out of college, but the transition period felt way more rough than how the TikTok guy presented it. It's ironic, too, that it feels like I didn't get a real high school graduation, and 4 years later, my school's botched ceremony and horrendous graduation speech involving Bitcoin, and getting the audience to sing Look Up Ohio State 2024 graduation speaker. It almost makes me feel like I didn't have a true college graduation either.
at Toffmeister 3 wrote,
1731, this guy is spot on. People used to be so much more friendly to strangers, and now everyone just minds their own business. What caused this? Maybe the whole left versus right thing, or jab versus no jab. But it feels like everyone is disconnected from each other.
the KP 2706 wrote,
My family and I pretty much checked out of general society when Biden prematurely declared the pandemic over after vaccines, which was a lie. We've tightened up our social groups and only associate with others who share our values about protecting their health. We are so fortunate to be thriving in every category, mentally, financially, etc. We'll be leaving this country in a few years. Yes, COVID changed everything for us, and oddly for the better.
at ER12 wrote,
It's so crazy how people online talk about the pandemic. I know I'm lucky in a way, cause nothing, and I do mean nothing changed for me during the pandemic. I worked more than ever with overtime. I stayed in hotels and went to restaurants after working during the day, albeit I was alone, cause everyone else was in the house. It was weird time for sure, but had no one told me, I would have never known there was a pandemic, which what that says about me and my job. Not even a earth-wide pandemic will give me a day off.
Crimpkeeper wrote,
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me. Tecumseh once said, always give a word or a sign of salute when meeting or passing a friend, even a stranger, when in a lonely place. If you're too nervous about giving a compliment to a stranger, start with simply saying hello or nodding your head if someone makes eye contact. You'd be amazed at the friendly gestures and waves you'll get back.
at the IGITNBLUE wrote,
I fortunately had the opposite results. I was a socially inept, introverted person to begin with questionable manners. But after being forced to stay stuck in the house for that long, I got sick of it and needed to hang out with other people.
at Zoex7993 wrote,
As a teacher in higher education,
I agree 100% with the guy who said that people are more self-absorbed and less conscious of shared social spaces/basic politeness now. Students will regularly arrive 20 minutes late to a 50 minutes class, like it is no big deal. They come and go even during each other's presentations, even after I ask that they refrain from doing this and explain how it is disrespectful and distracting. They don't seem to care. This kind of thing did not happen before COVID. The culture has definitely shifted, and it has been shocking to me. Also, students are constantly wearing headphones now/isolated in their own little world. Before COVID, they used to talk to each other and actually meet other people in the class.
At Kaya Kelly 9146 wrote,
That whole basic decency and manners thing was happening before COVID. This is a generational issue. NOONE holds their kids accountable for anything or teaches them manners, and they don't teach manners in kindergarten anymore either.
At William Scavenger Fish wrote,
COVID meant nothing to me. What did matter before that was going on medication for high blood pressure? Seems everyone else went batty or converted to the Church of the Divine Loony.
At Masked Hades wrote,
I think another aspect is that COVID put extroverts into introverts' atmospheres, causing a clash of behaviors that extroverts aren't stable enough to actively meet those expectations that are easy for introverts follow. Of course, I'm not speaking for all extroverts. As an introvert myself, I was doing just fine during COVID. I didn't feel I had to get vaccinated due to my very own behavior of just straight up avoiding folks in general, whereas the people I knew whom couldn't stand being at home for long periods of time were losing their minds and acting very erratic and aggressive.
At MAGA N4T3J wrote,
My son was a sophomore at first. It was okay at first, but he was missing all his sports and show choir and varsity choir. He is definitely a social kid.
At Brian Crookshank 4013 wrote,
I worked all through COVID, reignited my alcoholism, and stressed about having a child. Sitting in my truck while my wife went to the doctor for pregnancy checkups. I'm kind of broken now. That's all.
At MBJK_baby wrote,
444 emo start medium. A small concert. A decently reviewed bar. In a way, you have to get comfortable with noise. The more comfy you are with noise, the less overstimulation you'll feel when you go to the smaller places. I was diagnosed with social anxiety, and I'm an introvert, but therapy was too slow since I have ADHD, and I like to make things better now so that I don't forget and never come back to it. Using psychology and forcing myself to just live in society was better than any therapist I've ever seen, and I've had multiple since they all tried to become my friend before solving the problems I wanted solved, and I just don't got the patience for that.
At Bethany 7072 wrote,
Personally, I think COVID really put what matters in life in perspective a lot sooner than it otherwise would have if life just kept chugging along as usual. It made me more grateful, more thoughtful, more considerate, more aware, more discerning. Society-wise, I don't think we've even scratched the surface of the long-term effects of the lockdowns on people's mental health, but especially the social, emotional, and behavioral development of ALLL, the quarantine babies and toddlers whose first years of life were surrounded by screens or people whose faces were covered. I think we have yet to see those effects, and I do worry about the youngest, most vulnerable generations to come.
At Superchingling 6618 wrote,
Being a germaphobe, I always suspected people were not very germ conscious. COVID confirmed all my conspiracy theories. People are gross. Like, how do you not know how to wash your hands?
At Jake the Beast Delta wrote,
To me, the toilet paper crisis was funny during the lockdown because I was in a university dorm, and one of my roommates was stealing toilet paper from the utility closet.
At Oh Goody Gumdrops wrote,
I'm going to give a perspective of someone who grew up in the fandom space
and how it definitely affected the communities because of COVID. Fandoms are built on entertainment media from anime and movies that used to be defined as nerd culture. It was niche and usually it had people making fun of you for knowing a certain topic too much or just finding media childish. However, when those people, or bullies who made fun of nerds, watched certain things during the pandemic, they started enjoying it. And don't get me wrong, it's nice to have more people loving something you love. Yet, they were not willing to learn the fandom etiquette that longtime fans have built up on the internet for years. They would demand content be catered to them, would say we need to see ourselves in the media to relate, or even straight up bend the words with concrete definitions into something it's not. They didn't want to take the time to learn about the rules of the internet. Yes, we had rules, even if they were silly and made up by 4chan, which in turn made a lot of infighting and people getting called very serious terms that would ruin anyone's career. Did we have bad apples in fandom before COVID? Of course, but it wasn't to this extent that everyone started walking on eggshells if they didn't ship the right couple, drew a character the wrong way, or even focused on taboo topics. I am more into the fictional side of the fandom spaces, but even I could see the damage on the realistic fictional side too. People cannot understand that fiction doesn't affect reality and think if you like this X, a villain, a moral gray character, lolicon, etc., then you must either condone their behavior/actions or one of the many taboo words that YouTube probably won't let you say. It's so frustrating because again in fandom everyone knew it was fiction and couldn't actually hurt anyone in real life. Now I see little kids or some idiots trying to defend a cartoon character that is made out of pixels while pointing and laughing/send death threats to real life people. One of the golden rules of don't like, don't read/interact has fallen apart because people can't mind their own business and block people to cater their own space. The internet used to be a safe haven for nerds like me. But now, everyone trying to make us purity reasons on how their favorite anything isn't bad or real life people getting doxxed, threat, and censored over fictional characters/content. When entertainment falls into a purity culture, we lose all sense of creativity and freedom. I know because I went through the censorship era and video games cause violence time, and this is not it.
At Andrea Decker 2472 wrote,
Oh, and I also cringe when I hear the word unprecedented. And I don't trust the news and unfollowed pretty much everything and gone to live under a rock about the rest of the world when I can lol new headline. Donald Trump said this and that me. Yeah, if you reckon mate. Presses snooze for 30 days.
At Michelson_Royal wrote,
During the whole COVID experience, I carried on like normal, except I was aware of everything all the time. And they were trying to tell me what to do. I hated that, so I rebelled, as I usually do. But during all that, I saw the ways it affected others. Mentally, socially, spiritually, economically, politically, everything lie. It was straight up diabolical. Like evil.
At Andrea Decker 2472 wrote,
I relocated during COVID because the dropped rent price and job availability were prime. I always intended to use it as a stepping stone to another place. Am now looking to relocate again. Once the lockdown ended, I found the behavior of people changed for the worse. I live in Melbourne, Australia. The drivers came back out. I'm a truck driver, and I've never been more frightened to be out there. I actually quit driving for over a year because it was so bad that I was either gonna end up dead or in jail. Cut off. People jumping in front of my fully loaded semi at red lights by going up mediums to push in. Me slamming on the brakes because it wasn't always just one CSR, it was multiple. Me hitting the horn and them flipping me off. It was so little, and it still is to some degree. After COVID and the local state government handed money out because of their stupid policies, they sent the state broke. Now they're trying to get that back by ripping everyone off. Now the cost of living is terrible everywhere in Australia. The rent prices have gone through the roof. The property prices to buy a house is unattainable unless you already had one before this. The RBA reverse bank kept saying that inflation this and that and raked up the interest rates when people couldn't even pay their bills, rent/mortgage, buy food all at once. People are now living a lower quality of life, and the divide between rich and poor has widened so much. The teenagers and young adults seem to be delusional of their worth in the workplace. They think they should earn more than anyone else with zero skills. Not all kids, BTW. There's so much entitlement. I had one customer tell me that he had a 17-year-old come work for him, and he was training him into a fabrication and welding role. He had zero experience. He said that on day 2 of working, he needs to be paid $2,000 clear after tax a week. The owner was like, "Mate, I don't even earn that with 40 years experience. You see that door? You can F off right out it, and don't come back." I'm paraphrasing. And I've heard it a lot. You got some good kids out there for sire, but the entitled ones are way more. I hate it here right now. I'm trying to relocate somewhere nicer and warmer because, really, if I pay the same high prices anywhere, I'm gonna choose somewhere warmer.
At Kimbra 4632 wrote,
I found that there's no order to life anymore. Everybody's just doing what they want. Sometimes in good ways, but people think that they can go into the corner store and just take whatever they want like. It's their fridge and their chips. And people have been hanging out in MC Donald's for a long time. But people are so unruly. Now they have rules that nobody under 18 can go to the mall by themselves or in MC Donald's by themselves. The children don't know how to follow the order so that they are not expelled from places. I feel like they need a charm school in high school.
A Dark Wanderer 149 wrote,
7:15 I want people that I don't know to not care that I'm there. I won't exist to them if they don't remember, and like whose neither will they exist to me.
At Princess Sap 9635 wrote,
Interesting discussion. Would have been helpful to include hearing from those for whom it was not a slowdown but a ramp up: healthcare workers, delivery people, staff shortages, the stigma and resentment of having to be the ones going to work while pretty well everyone else was at home. Real total 180 from what majority of world experienced. Taking the risk for everyone else and underpaid for it. A lot of people left their professions, also people in the eastern parts of the world, and poorer countries didn't necessarily have these luxuries of the laptop class that saved money working at home. Boredom would have been a privilege for many.
A Dark Wanderer 149 wrote,
5645. No, why do I need to talk to anyone? I know I'm a minority in this, but I don't see the value to expend energy on any of that.
A Johnny Sachs 69 wrote,
I'm older and the world changed long before COVID. I would say it started in the late 90s and got much worse after 9/11. The availability of certain foods, store hours, and buying power got worse after COVID.
At MBJK_baby wrote,
328, I think. As someone who needed time off, I was one of a few people that the lockdowns helped. I realized they needed to spend time alone. to deal with the trauma of almost being murdered when I was younger. Instead of acting like it never happened, I've always had great social skills, especially for an introvert. And if I'm out, I can put up a front and keep the same energy the whole time. It's a blessing and a curse, though, as I was so friendly that I needed years to learn to close myself off and not accept everyone because that's how I was hurt. Multiple times in the past, whether it was physical, emotional, or both. I love giving others compliments. I love being friendly. But I used to not listen to my discernment, and I always thought innocent until proven guilty, whereas I have a 97.6% correct discernment. Even medical professionals I saw in the past have gotten right. Normally, the only thing my discernment picks up as being a not good person for me is childhood trauma, like with one of my friends.
At Max Bazanovta wrote,
I know what's happening to us. It's a feeling of shame. Shame for all that we have done to ourselves during this hallucinogenic delusion, which is called a pandemic. COVID is dangerous, it's true, but we could do without this kind of shit that was staged all over the world. I'm thinking of Peter Watts's Rifter's trilogy. It is truly a prophetic book when it describes the simultaneous spread of a computer virus masquerading as a mean and a real virus. Both of them help spread each other. This is exactly what we observed. At some point, a catastrophic positive feedback process started, and the system collapsed. COVID is not only a dangerous coronavirus, but also its informational brother, the coronavirus meme. Together, they showed us how pathetic and stupid we are. Also, lots of people wanted a full-fledged end of the world, like in zombie movies, and they got a boring story about how life goes on. Anyway, time heals everything. People will forget it soon. We always forget.
At Caden Meckham 1189 wrote,
Hey Amir, I lost 40% of my sense of taste and smell after getting COVID. I know this video was more focusing on the social aspects, but I think about the people I know literally has their tastes changed by COVID.
At Tigress Vanna 02 wrote,
COVID happened when I was 18. No prom, no graduation, college got closed down, and the job I had lined up canceled because they closed. 2020 was the worst year of my life. Very hard start to adulthood.
At Samantha Barron 8481 wrote,
COVID years were the worst years of my life, but at the same time, the most eye-opening, for different reasons than it was for others. It was both destructive and transformative for me.
At Kelly 19841 wrote,
I was in law school when the lockdown really happened. I was already a father of two, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, with another that was born in August of 2019. I had my priorities, and I managed to get locked in on working out.
At Nefertiti Kimagawa wrote,
I will say I'm an introvert, and I liked being in my house, but I did start to miss my friends and going to hang out. I did take the time to invest in my mental health and career. Now I'm much better off than I was in 2020. I am still working on being the first to speak up. Once a conversation is going, I'm just talking, but I'm still struggling to be the one to start a conversation. I have been trying to compliment people when I see something I like. I love fashion, so I'm always excited to see someone that has something different or unique or just really put effort into their appearance. It's been hard, but people always smile when I finally get my words out, and it makes me happy. I have been using this time of year to say congratulations to people I see walking around in their cap and gown. It feels like an easy thing to say because I doubt anyone will get upset if you congratulate them on graduating.
At Zero Cordley wrote,
I worked during basically all of lockdown. I worked at Whole Foods first and then a bakery. Nothing changed except they forced us to wear masks and put up plexiglass, and costumers became Karens. All of them.
At Krista 2882 wrote,
For me, I feel like society has gone downhill because of TikTok. It's not COVID lockdown. Lockdown only lasted a few months in a lot of places. At least here in CT, lockdown was about a week, and then a lot of restaurants took a few months to reopen. After a week or so of lockdown, stores reopened and just required masks or only allowed a few people in the store at once. I remember having to wait in line to go into Home Depot because of this. It was only a few weeks after COVID started going around.
Eswexty wrote,
1545, I was a senior during COVID and I lost senior prom, graduation, everything. I hated it. I lived with a toxic-ass family and dropped out of college because the campus was shut down. It was horrible.
At Sparky3514 wrote,
I finally had time away from my emotionally abusive BF. It made me realize all these red flags about him. When we reunited when there was less restrictions, I really felt aware of his behaviors and decided to end things.
At JoeGentry3726 wrote,
You're forgetting the point of view of parents. You didn't have time to do anything. Our kids were home 24/7. Yeah, they say they were remote learning, but while the teacher was teaching on the computer, the parents were sitting in the chairs saying, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And then we had to sit there next to them, making sure they got their work done. The teacher still got paid, but the parents didn't. We struggled. We had to pay for twice as much childcare because the schools were closed, but we still had to go to work. It's at low-income and middle-class families back immensely.
At Sarah Kinsey 5434 wrote,
My life didn't change much because my family kept working like normal. My brother worked at a grocery store, my mom and I at Joanne's Rip, and my dad is a tile setter in new houses.
At Lenny of Bassist wrote,
I've noticed this through the years. So many people now act like small talk is only awkward torture, and not the keys to striking up conversation through natural progression. It's exhausting.
At Duddlebugbeeboo wrote,
I was laid off from work and learned a lot about gardening and started to build mine. To this day, I am growing some food for my family and also had great quality of time with my kids to build a better bond. Although me and the family benefited from this time, the way the world has become today has me seriously concerned. I think people have become radicalized and hateful. Nobody knows how to make friends or communicate.
At Cassidy Nicole 28 wrote,
Working in healthcare during COVID and not being able to relate to people talking about being on lockdown, I wish I had that time to chill lol.
At Kaminavari 9616 wrote,
COVID has nothing to do with people not engaging with each other anymore. That is an excuse. It is the boom of rage posting videos. Women making fun of men who try to approach them. Guys and gals being too emotiony sensitive, too easily offended, too quick to cancel a person if they dare say the wrong thing to the wrong person. COVID has nothing to do with that. It is emotionally weak, mentally sensitive, craving that quick dopamine hit by posting a rage video about this guy saying this, that girl saying that. We need to go back to the world of sticks and stones, may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. The people are not interacting anymore because they are terrified to.
At Tritarch 6687 wrote,
What the pandemic taught me is the only person you can trust is yourself. I'll admit it was great to have spare time during the lockdowns and use the time to improve myself somewhat, mainly used to catch up on games and shows. Yet the alienation that came from COVID by society, throwing anyone under the bus who did not conform, was all I needed to know about people. I won't go into details, but I'm colder, bitter, aloof, and frankly disgusted with people anymore. I checked out of society. Going to be self-employed soon and will be beholden to no one.
At El Soroyo N7M wrote,
Well, I have a similar stance, and I think that sports and entertainment still hasn't fully escaped the UFC stranglehold since UFC 100 in 2009, and the remainder of the last decade was dominated by Bellator MMA, RIP by the way watching pro wrestling again after AEW Double or Nothing 2019. I think besides the obvious here and there, he couldn't let pro wrestling stay in the backseat to everything else UFC, especially post WWE Invasion, Angle and Benoit family massacre, which regardless of his negative reception, made the business profitable again. Another 101 brings up is people like me in particular anyways. It distracted us from the Obama administration nonsense. Sure, Donald Trump is much worse, but Barack and Michelle Obama were not Uncle Phil and Aunt Vive themselves either. You gotta remember 19 to 20-year-old were miserable enough, as is. I haven't mentioned Jersey Shore, Twilight, Key Dollar Ha, and Call of Duty, even if they made lots of money in the long run.
At Justin Words 8049 wrote,
My strange flex is I am allergic to the original COVID vaccines, genuinely, which is wild. I went into anaphylaxis roughly 30 minutes after my first dose, just as I was just about to be released from the 30-min observation bay. I promptly then learned at the hospital after taking an epi shot that females and those with allergies had an increased chance of having a reaction. Double whammy if you were both like I was. Took a while until I was able to find one made for people who had reactions, and eventually found one called Novavax IRC. And while waiting for one to come out, I did a trial study for the second dose about how to safely administer it without triggering a reaction. They split the dose into 4 separate shots, one every 15 minutes to observe for a reaction between the shots. Worked well enough and I didn't have a reaction the second time around. Still waited for the allergy-friendly one so I didn't have to wait an hour for one whole shot.
At Michelle Booth 327 wrote,
I agree with that guy. Before COVID and after COVID, that's what I say. Or I call it before the madness and after the madness. Things have changed as a lot of people are angry and sad after everything that happened. It would be nice if justice was done, but I'm not holding my breath. Maybe in 20 years things will come out. It seems to be the way it works.
At Rachel Amber 3227 wrote,
I was 17 when the Rona happened and now I'm 22, and for the longest time I've felt still 17. I just got my degree and did 4 years of college, but on some level I very much still feel like a teenager.
At Coco K 9725 wrote,
COVID definitely opened eyes, and TBH, I think it was truly needed because society has had these blinders on for so long. It was a time to allow people to take a step back and reconnect with themselves and find themselves. Depending on how one used that time determines what they got out of it.
At Antivine 9610 wrote,
COVID forced me to work the brutal blue-collar jobs. I wasn't socially ready to do much after high school. I am making MICH better progress than I have, say, 7 years ago right after I graduated college. But man, COVID screwed up every young person's chances in the social experience.
At Andromeda Blackheart wrote,
Yeah, society is effed for at minimum 1 to 2 generations after COVID, if not more. How it was handled was terrible. I do have a feeling this likely the exact same for us back, when the Black Death ravaged Europe all the way through Asia in the mid-14th century. History doesn't repeat as much as it rhymes. Hopefully this will be a learning lesson for the next time centuries later.
At Rogue Ninja Chef wrote,
I've been staying home a lot even before COVID, so it didn't affect me much. That time period showed me people's true character, and it wasn't pretty. Strangers who fought each other for toilet paper and friends freaking out and getting angry on social media, etc. It got nasty out there.
At Celestial Star 5563 wrote,
Boomers, it's all about the money, baby. Gen X, is it only about the money? Millennials, where is the money? Gen Z, what the hell is money? Alpha A, I watched Skibidi Toilet today.
and Vodka Jables wrote,
Before the pandemic, I took myself out on a date. Alone. I went to a movie and then to a fancy restaurant.
I was a workaholic.
So my birthday came up, which I usually work through. Everything. But this time, this one was for me. And I did it solo and had the best time. Also with no mobile data 5.
Didn't do it for the grams, Mice.
I did it for myself.
Captain Kitty 1205 wrote,
I don't really understand this change that everyone thinks that happened. During it, I worked retail through the whole time. The only thing that was different then was everyone seemed to have endless amounts of money to spend on frivolous things. Maybe I am just out of touch.
Critter Kid Outdoors wrote,
Manners, integrity, morals, and accountability, all those things are virtually gone, it feels like. And something about making friends feels impossible. Like, can I find dude friends who aren't piece of poop that treat people like crap?
and Jabrilla wrote,
I remember before COVID and before Uber Eats and DoorDash got big, thinking, boy, I really wish I could get a cheeseburger delivered to me. Now, after COVID, I can Uber Eats a whole restaurant style meal from almost any place I want. It's not all bad circumflex underscore tilde.
At Doof Warrior 800 wrote,
I'm 28 and I go to a brewery between my work and home. Beer isn't the main reason I go. The biggest reason is my social battery, and the place itself is a bastion of community for the town. All walks of life go there, and my drinking circle is people of all ages of previous generations of old wisdom and views whom you can debate with at times and still drink at the same table.
At Lenii Nero wrote,
I'm commenting as I watch, although I know it's not going to be read. But I went through COVID while living in Houston, Texas, and I also worked in a medical clinic, and the amount of ignorance and stupidity by grown-ass people I was around was astounding. It seems to me the majority of the people didn't live through 9/11s and the solidarity that came after that. Just thought I'd mention it. I came to NYC where I was born and raised, post-COVID in late 2021 after having COVID twice in Texas. And the NY I left and the NY I returned to are two different places. Firstly, Gen Z were little kids when I left, which is a major downer now that they are adults because they have no respect, no sense, and no drive. They expect shit to be handed to them, and it literally doesn't work like that. And secondly, the best way to describe NYC post-COVID is dingy, like it has no vibrancy, no life, no joy de vivre. When I was growing up in the 90s and 2000s, the best time, there was obviously still violence and drugs, etc., like everywhere else, but there were people in the street, music blasting, people talking on the stoops, kids playing in the street, events like block parties, music coming out of cars, etc. There's even videos on here about that era. Now there's nothing. I came to visit in 2017 and it was like that still. Just dingy, I've always been team solo because I'm used to being alone and I'm used to not having friends / people to hang out with. So I do all the things you described by myself.
At Tumanirads 3827 wrote,
People want walkable cities translation. People want to not leave their homes. It's not as simple as convenience. It's about laziness. COVID changed very little for me, so I don't accept COVID as an excuse to be rude, lazy, entitled, and whiny.
At Natalie Velasquez 9121 wrote,
For me, COVID-19 2020 pandemic was the worst year for me. Why? Well, that was the last time we as a society didn't act oversensitive on anything. Politics definitely got woke. The government was enforcing the jab and masks on everyone because, God forbid, you argued against it without having to be fact-checked, reported, or have your social media taken down, not to mention it caused people to act toxic with each other by unfriending or cutting all ties for the wrong reasons. It definitely caused people to live in fear due to getting COVID, which is the flu. It caused people to act rude and entitled, not to mention manners apparently don't matter. And lastly, it definitely caused jobs to lose businesses and close down, and definitely taught society how to be lazy and unfit.
At Rush Kitty 83 wrote,
I live in Florida and we didn't do a lot of pandemicking. Our kids still learn to read, but they did put them in masks for quite a while. I feel it affected my kids.
Ephizimajig wrote,
2019 was the busiest and most stressful year almost of my life. I had fun, stressful times, intentionally dropped 40 pounds, and took 2 very active trips with friends to Peru. And, much less fun or outright horrible stressful times, my dad nearly died of a strangulated hernia, and I had to help my parents with everything for a while. My mom broke her hip and went through surgery and rehab. I had to move my brick-and-mortar business in a short period of time and managed to do it without taking any time off between the move. I got several sinus infections, and then end of year I got either the flu or COVID and coughed so much I ended up with an umbilical hernia. When 2020 COVID hit the fan, I took like a month off and hibernated and enjoyed the time to recover and relax. I will say where I live in Florida, we have been bombarded by people and traffic in the last few years, and it has drastically changed the landscape and general tone of my hometown for the worse. We have way too many transplants and way too many crappy drivers and way too much traffic now. I honestly used to love living in my area as a third-generation Floridian, and now I've come to hate it just in the last few years since COVID.
At Badgerden 7080 wrote,
What has changed for me is the way I feel about our government. I wasn't a fan of it before, but the pandemic really exposed how evil government truly is. Everything that was done to control us, not to protect us, like they claim.
At Life After Losing wrote,
2 things in my lifetime changed the country for the worse. 9/11 and then COVID. The country has never been the same since either. The 90s were the last time things felt normal, in my opinion. Even the economy hasn't been as good for average people since 9/11.
At XD Nostalgia wrote,
The complimenting thing you mentioned was very interesting. I never actually thought of that, and it why. I hardly even compliment myself tbh, so maybe that plays a part in it.
At Jim Brightback 967 wrote,
At 3:55, she says, etc., meaning etc. People need to read. They assume they know these words, but she's clearly never read it and wouldn't recognize it if she saw it written somewhere. Embarrassing.
At the Chronic, Ironic wrote,
You perfectly verbalized all of the feelings I have about the clock app. Weirdly, when I type the actual name, it gets deleted by the tube. Anyway, I wish I could put my thoughts into such eloquent words, but I'm glad there are people like you who can do it for me. Thanks, Amir. I love the guy talking about BC being before COVID. I do not recognize the world anymore. The world one once knew no longer exists, and it truly, truly makes me sad. There's of course some good things that have happened and good ways in which the world has changed. But overall it feels like this fever dream/nightmare that I'm just waiting to wake up from. As for going out/doing things alone, yes. My BFF and I are both very independent in the sense we just like to do our own thing, but we also like to do stuff together. But when we go out, I never feel like I have to worry about what she wants to do. Like a lot of times we will go out together and branch off and do our own thing if that makes sense. And I just love sometimes going off on my own and not having to worry about others like are they having a good time? Are they comfortable? Do they want to leave yet or stay? I want to go home, but what if they're not ready to leave? Like I know y'all know what I mean. When I'm by myself, none of that. Obviously, as a female, though, I have to be very careful about going off on my own. There's only so much self-defense classes and some pepper spray can do to protect me, so I do have to be very mindful. But if you're smart about it and mindful of your safety, doing things by yourself can be great on so many levels.
At Neo-Vintage Solutions wrote,
They treated everyone's lives like an on/off switch. They told everyone your work, school, freedom doesn't matter because old people, majority of whom died anyway sadly, were at risk. Now we realize that society is actually one giant hamster wheel that had to keep spinning no matter what, and once they stopped it, you can't just switch it back on like a switch again. Now the whole system has been exposed as a scam, and no one wants to play the game anymore. My life will never be the same again, along with many friends and family that are still here. Whatever happens next as a result of these terrible decisions, our leaders did it to themselves.
At Afton Crane 2042 wrote,
I was in high school during COVID and had just moved away from my hometown to a new city. While I had no friends, I learned 2 languages, maintained straight A's, and wrote a novel, so I'm not mad overall that it happened.
A Brown Acid wrote,
On the note of people not going out anymore, I attribute that to BLM riots and leftist lunatics enabling criminal behavior, specifically in Democrat-run cities. Police have no power, and people just don't want to deal with the BS, only to have an entitled black person or a fragile liberal disrupt their $50 burger meal. Not to mention tip culture. Indeed. OnlyFans ruined dating so men don't want to chase an OF/dating app thought with a high body count. Society is very sick.
At Adam Punk 5575 wrote,
I remember when COVID-19 occurred a few weeks before. I was trying to enlist in the US Navy, wanted to be a CBCB, but had gotten the news 9F this virus floating around told by the petty officers. I never enlisted, couldn't pass the SWAP unfortunately.
At Scott Waldron 3475 wrote,
1434, I lost my career. I was a graphic designer deemed non-essential, and the company I worked at couldn't make it after everything opened up. I took a big leap as we were shut down. Now nobody wants to pay for good art when they can get okay art in no time at all.
At Amlissy wrote,
Shit, I'm glad I kept working and partying non-stop during COVID 9 hours on DoorDash, then testing every weekend and getting drunk with a big group of friends.
At Never Known True Love wrote,
COVID did nothing for me. I would still work multiple jobs and going to school. The only difference is I got pregnant and gave birth. That's it. So nothing negative and positive, at least for me.
At MKC 5230 wrote,
Customer service definitely went to hell. Customer is always right became customer is putting you in immediate danger. Customer service never came back. It's still just completely gone.
At the Chronic, Ironic wrote,
Obviously, SNL is hit or miss, mostly miss, but sometimes hits hard. But there is this one absolutely hilarious, insanely relatable sketch about post-COVID life. The skit is called Post-COVID Game Show. The game show is called Is My Brain Okay? / highly recommend to anyone and everyone. I've watched it 50 times, and it never gets old. It just perfectly nails it on the head in regard to my feelings about post-COVID life. I'm one of the world completely fell apart post 2020 people, no doubt. Host, what day of the week is it? Jared Carmichael, contestant. I remember that yesterday was my birthday, and my best friend texted birthday on a Friday night, dog. What we doing to celebrate? And I got so anxious I didn't respond and went to sleep before 5 p.m. So today must be Saturday?
@uhevi wrote,
Thank for making this video, looking for the good and want to be good. It will find you eventually. It may not show up immediately, but when you teach yourself patience in a way that is tailored to you, you will be rewarded for real. Detaching in a healthy and graceful way is work. Good luck.
@Rayazai165 wrote,
Apparently, I had the exact opposite experience during COVID. I never worked so much and interacted with so many people than during that time. Student full-time, security full-time, graveyard, Amazon deliveries on weekends, Navy reserves, all while having a newborn at home. It always blows my mind people telling me they got tired of being home and doing nothing during that time. When I finally got down to working just 40 hours last year, I struggled. I would get crazy anxious if I wasn't just on the go 24/7. I'm finally learning how to just sit back and relax.
@Arjun Maud wrote,
I was a sophomore when COVID hit. You have a lot of time sitting at home. It was not fun, and yet it was. Really hated going back.
Stefan9905 wrote,
Under lockdown, I gained a bunch of weight and drank a lot, mostly cause I couldn't do anything. Granted, I should have gained weight cause I was like 135 pounds.
Mr. Flameboy15 wrote,
COVID was such an interesting time for me. It honestly was pretty fun. The craziest part was things didn't really change. The town I live in is pretty much right in between San Diego and Los Angeles, and during lockdown, everything was shut down. All the bars and clubs were closed, except for the ones in my town. So there would be people literally driving hours just to come to our little dive bars and clubs, and it was lit. There were lines through the parking lot and down the street to get into the clubs here. I think the city even ended up on the news as the only place in California that kept the bars open and didn't force social distancing. I think soon after that news story went viral, the bars were forced to shut down, but that was towards the end of lockdown anyway. Like the last few months. But for me, it was like there was no lockdown. The clubs were still open and were packed. We were getting all this extra money from that boost. It was honestly pretty sweet up until the end where the city got caught not following the rules. Elmau. But I will say post-pandemic, at least locally, all the people that did lockdown or were too young to go out or anything, they lost all their social skills.
Thysone Girl wrote,
Finally, someone said it. I hate it when I'm getting along with someone new, and all of a sudden I hear men are terrible, or it's hard to be a woman under this capitalist society. Like, sweetie, can we for once talk about fashion, hobbies, and stuff than involving anything political and societal issues for once? I'm not saying you shouldn't discuss such, but at least let's settle what we like and don't like and agree to disagree than make every conversation turn into a political sermon. What bothers me is that after COVID, apparently, it's become blasphemy to not want to know of every single issue that's occurring in the world. I've had people accuse me of being scared or ignorant simply because I don't see everything through a political lens. I'm apolitical, but I love the way you don't make everything about politics and instead about mental health and societal issues. Another thing I noticed is how people no longer have the ideal of universal values regardless of political ideology. It's either you're left or right.
And if not, then it means you're wrongful for not having an ideology. What happened to common decency?
Canine 9K wrote,
I never really got this perspective of lockdown. I graduated from high school in 2020. And I honestly think the world being put on a pause was the best. I didn't get sick, no one I cared about died from the illness, and I actually grew as an individual, got my first job, got to take a gap year, didn't have to take any SAT or ACT, and wasn't stunted at all during that time. I really enjoyed it. Plus the Earth's air quality / atmosphere was getting cleaner.
wrote,
As an introvert, I loved the pandemic. My favorite way of life was the expected behavior. I'm a teacher not in America, and I loved it too. However, I was looking forward to seeing my kiddies in person again. In saying this, I now work remotely in education, so I'm living the pandemic life minus the virus. Living the dream.